In 1999, Stanley Kubrick released a film about secret rituals, masked elites, and the hidden architecture of power operating just beyond public view. Days later, he was dead. No interviews, no explanations, just silence. Some believe Eyes Wide Shut was his final masterpiece. Others believe it was something far more dangerous, a glimpse behind a curtain few were meant to see. Tonight, we step into the shadows Kubrick left behind and ask whether his last film was fiction or a warning.
In the city where the bell won't ring and the crows sleep light on a length of string, there's a house set back from the river's spine with a black iron gate and a velvet sign where the judges drink from a silver cup and the good Lord's name is swallowed up by men in gloves and women in veils, trading in whispers and bloodless tales. Oh, the candles bend and the floorboards sigh and the smoke curls up like a question why. There's a hand on the book, there's a knife in the light, and the moon wears a mask tonight.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Common Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Stuart James. Joining me today is Clayton James. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 5. How's it going, brother?
It's going really good today. I had a nice walk in the snow over here this morning.
Yeah, a huge dump of snow last night. Winter's back. We're buried in it. It's good, though. It's all going to melt into slush in like 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really good today. I'd like to say I'm excited about this topic, but honestly, this topic is a little disturbing, a little uncomfortable, I have to say. We're going to be talking about our old buddy Stanley Kubrick. We have another Stanley Kubrick episode. We're talking about Eyes Wide Shut, and Stanley Kubrick just seems to have conspiracy theories follow him wherever he goes like a lost puppy. So I think this is turning into a bit of a theme. I think we could make a little compendium, 3 or 4 Stanley Kubrick episodes, hey?
Well, all of his movies seem to have conspiracy theory swirling around them, and this one is probably tied with The Shining for his movie with the most conspiracy theory swirling around it.
Yeah.
You watch this movie and it takes you down a really crazy rabbit hole.
Yeah.
If you kind of look into the things surrounding the production of the movie, what's trying to be conveyed in the subtext of the movie, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I look forward to unpacking it. It definitely sucked me in this week, and I remember we were talking about it when we first just came up with the idea for this episode, and I was saying to you, you know, I've seen Eyes Wide Shut, but it was a really long time ago. It probably was the early 2000s. I only watched it the one time, and the only thing I really remember about it is how uncomfortable it made me feel.
Yeah, so you know what? I had never seen this movie. Even though I'm a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick, I'd never seen this movie because it was always described as an erotic thriller.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit bashful.
Right.
So the thought of watching that made me, I kept putting off watching it.
Well, and I say that not because I'm a prude, but because I would say all of Stanley Kubrick's movies make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I feel like that's what Kubrick likes to do, is make his audience feel a little off-center, constantly questioning. But that's why his movies are so engaging, is because they just draw you in little by little. And the deeper you go, the more fascinated you are. It's like it keeps you in this place of dissonance, you know, where you're uncomfortable, but you can't look away.
Yeah.
So, well, why don't we dive into it? Can you start us off? I know you've got a good starting point
for
us.
I guess the best place to start with this story would be in March of 1999. Stanley Kubrick, he's holding a private screening of his latest movie. He's holding this screening in his own home in the UK, and he's in great spirits. He's in a great mood. He says he's just completed his greatest movie ever.
Yeah.
This legendary director, he's completed his greatest work.
Well, and he was working on it for a long time. I guess the idea of the movie, you could argue, was gestating for decades.
Yeah, he came up with the idea of this movie back in the 60s.
Yeah.
It was based on a 1926 novella called Traum Novelle, which translates to Dream Story, and we can get more into the novella a bit later. Anyway, he's going to hold this private screening. He's feeling really good about it. He's holding a screening for the movie's 2 stars, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and 2 executives from Warner Brothers. He says, you know, this is basically the finished movie. There's, you know, some color grading stuff to do, some minor technical stuff, but basically it's done.
Yeah.
He's very happy about it. And the executives watch this, and they are just thrilled. They love this movie.
Yeah.
This is excellent. Except for this, and this, and this, and this. You got to cut this. You can't put this on film.
Yeah.
You can't show this. And this actually apparently led to a very heated exchange between Kubrick and these two executives. He was overheard shouting, "You can't do this to my movie. This is not my movie. If you do this to my movie, you can't do this. This is the movie."
Yeah.
And you know what? They couldn't touch his movie because of a contract he had with Warner Brothers. He had rights to the final cut.
Yeah.
He had complete creative control over the final cut. They could not alter it.
And this I found to be as an interesting aside just on Kubrick in his career, is he had an incredible amount of creative freedom in producing his movies. And that kind of plays into the conspiracy angles. Why? Because there's this huge producer-led structure in Hollywood, and supposedly that's, from what I understand, that's why he left Hollywood and kind of relocated to England and never went back to America, is because he's trying to get out of this producer-controlled system in Hollywood to have greater control. But he always ended up in these contracts with every film he was working on where he had the absolute last say, and he was dogged and meticulous in his application of his creativity.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that's why. Maybe he was just so insistent. But it does make me wonder, why was he able to strike this deal that no one else can get, you know? But anyway, I digress.
Anyway, this argument ends in kind of a deadlock. The executives are, overall, they love the movie, but you can't show this. You can't show that.
Will not be released.
They couldn't do anything about it. Because of that contract Kubrick had. Kubrick storms off, says, "This is the movie." A couple days later, Stanley Kubrick's dead.
Mm-hmm. Heart attack.
Dies of a heart attack. Just like our old friend Serge Monast suddenly died of a heart attack. So,
not that we're drawing parallels.
I might be drawing parallels. Anyway, after Kubrick's death, the studio is able to do whatever they want with the movie.
Yeah, so they finished it for him.
Yeah, apparently an entire 30 minutes was removed from the film.
Yeah.
Which was unreleasable.
And no one, if I'm right, no one to this day has seen that, aside from the people at this screening, I suppose.
No one's seen it. It's never been released on a DVD, director's cut, special features. It's locked in a salt mine somewhere.
Yeah. The only people who would have seen those 30 minutes are the people that saw that screening. Yeah. That's interesting.
So Kubrick, when he relocated to the UK and he was able to exercise more creative control over his films began exploring these recurring themes of hidden systems of power. Mm-hmm. And basically, this story is a culmination of all of that. This novella, the movie's based on Traum Novelle. It takes place in Vienna. It involves this Dr. Fridolin. He has an argument with his wife, Albertine. And during this argument, Albertine confesses that she has been fantasizing about abandoning him, abandoning their family to pursue, other men.
Yeah.
And she fantasizes about this all the time. Dr. Fridolin, he's very upset by this. He goes out into the night to kind of walk it off.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting into this escalating series of surreal and morally ambiguous situations.
Yeah.
Which all culminates in him almost accidentally infiltrating this masked party at a mansion.
Yeah.
And this ritual being conducted by a secret society.
Yeah.
And afterwards, after he is inexplicably, he's discovered that he doesn't belong there, and they inexplicably let him go. But afterwards, he's being followed, and he feels like they're after him, and he's just spiraling into paranoia. And that's the story. That's basically the story of Eyes Wide Shut, except instead of Vienna, it takes place in modern-day New York. And Dr. Fridolin is Bill Harper, played by Tom Cruise, and his wife Alice, played by Nicole Kidman. But otherwise, the story plays out pretty much exactly the same. So, again, Kubrick's themes of hidden systems of power.
Yeah.
So what was in those 30 minutes that was cut from the film? That
absolutely could not be shown.
Could not be shown.
When you consider all that was left in and all that is implied with what we actually see in the final cut of the movie. What was so damnable about those missing 30 minutes?
Yeah, because
can't help but wonder.
What's shown in the movie is pretty insane.
Yeah.
This kind of satanic ritual conducted by these masked, robed figures, which culminates in this weird sex party. There's actually one scene in the movie which kind of parallels real life right now. Basically, Tom Cruise, he's seen some pretty wild things. The next day, he's trying to retrace his steps from the night before. He's trying to discover more about this. And he feels like he's being followed, like he's being warned, like give up your inquiries.
Yeah.
And he's being intimidated, and he's just kind of spiraling into paranoia. He gets a call from his friend Victor Ziegler, who we see at the start of the movie, who's oddly enough a very Jeffrey Epstein-like character.
Yeah.
Very much a Jeffrey Epstein-like character. And Victor Ziegler pulls him aside and says, Bill, I know what you've been doing. I know where you were the other night.
Yeah. I was there.
I was there. And I don't know what you were thinking. I don't know how you found out about this place. I don't know how you got through the door.
Yeah.
But you need to give this up.
Yeah, and you don't realize how much trouble you're actually in.
Yeah, he says, those weren't any ordinary people, those masked people. Do you have any idea who that was? I'm not going to tell you who that was, but just know that if you knew who they were, you wouldn't sleep so well at night.
Yeah.
That just reminded me so much of just recent events.
Yeah.
You know, Pam Bondi hearing.
Yeah, just putting into context that Eyes Wide Shut was released in 1999.
Yeah.
Well before all of this stuff came to light about Epstein, right?
Yeah.
So certainly people had to know this stuff was going on in elite circles, but the general public, this was still all a massive conspiracy theory if you talked about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right? But we all know it's true today.
Yeah, but the most recent hearing with Pam Bondi, the head of the Department of Justice, she was being kind of grilled by this congressional committee over how she handled the release of these Epstein documents, because so many names of associates and co-conspirators and perpetrators in Epstein's crimes are left redacted, while a lot of the names of the victims were very poorly redacted or left unredacted.
Yeah.
It was very messily handled. And at one point, I don't have the exact quote, but Pam Bondi says those names had to be left redacted. If we unmasked those names, the whole system would fall apart.
Yeah.
It's just exactly mirrored Ziegler's lines.
Yeah.
If you knew who those people were, you wouldn't sleep so well.
It would destroy all our institutions of power, probably globally.
Yeah.
Or potentially. I mean, supposedly. Allegedly.
But, we'll never know what was in those missing 30 minutes that got cut from the film. That was so bad it couldn't be shown. Yeah. So damning it couldn't be shown. But Kubrick was very clever.
Yeah. Well, his movies are so rich, and the subtext baked into his movies are so rich. Trimming out 30 minutes cannot take away the message and the driving thrust of the story he was telling.
Yeah.
So I think you could argue, even though it's, at the end of the day, it's not everything he wanted to put out there in his final cut. Some would argue it's not really his movie at this point. I would say he still probably was able to convey what he wanted to convey. So maybe we can unpack the symbols and hints baked within the movie itself to kind of decipher what he was getting at.
Yeah, and Kubrick was very clever like that. He encoded so much in the details you see in the background of the movie. This part of the reason he exercised so much control on set, like all the exterior shots in that movie, and in most of his movies, like when Tom Cruise is walking around New York City, that isn't filmed on location. All of those streets are constructed on interior sound stages. Yeah. So Kubrick,
which is incredible. It looks incredibly real.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kubrick could exercise absolute control on every single thing you were going to see on the screen. Even minor little background details contain important symbolism. So, what are your favorite symbols in this movie?
Well, I would say the first most obvious is got to be the 8-pointed star.
Yes,
so the movie kicks off with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman as a married couple going to Ziegler's Christmas party.
Yeah.
The whole movie takes place just before Christmas. I think it's on Christmas Eve, which is something else we can get into later. But so they go to Ziegler's party, who's a patient of Tom Cruise, as he's a doctor. And they go to this ball, and the first thing you see is kind of a Christmas decoration on the wall. Yeah. And it's an 8-pointed star.
The Star of Ishtar.
The Star of Ishtar, yes. And do you want to talk about what the Star of Ishtar is all about?
Well, the Star of Ishtar is a Mesopotamian symbol representing the goddess Ishtar, the goddess of war and fertility.
And Venus, isn't it?
And Venus. And that's why it's an 8-pointed star. Yeah. Because Venus goes on this 8-year cycle. During this 8-year cycle, Venus traces out a perfect pentagram in the sky relative to the Earth. Yeah. And at the end of this 8-year cycle, it'll return to its starting location. So Venus is represented by the star, the 8-pointed star of Ishtar. It's also represented by a pentagram. Take your pick.
Yeah, so immediately we're seeing those occult esoteric references.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, Ishtar, Mesopotamian goddess, also often conflated with the Canaanite deity Baal. Both of these deities are mentioned as in the Bible as basically demons.
Yeah.
And they're often conflated together. Baal, actually the Canaanite deity of storms and fertility, and is worshipped, this is debated but generally accepted, was worshipped through child sacrifice. The other thing I found interesting was there's so much Scientology connections to this movie.
Yeah, where Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, both Scientologists, if I'm correct.
Yeah, yeah. They actually, the Church of Scientology actually had an informant on the set of this movie during production,
Right.
because they were so concerned that Tom Cruise, basically the spokesperson for Scientology,
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman kind of reluctantly joined the church after she married Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick's daughter had recently joined the church,
Yeah,
which
and-
led
and-
him to become estranged from his
Yeah,
daughter.
and like this was his eldest daughter. He had 3 daughters,
Yeah,
I believe.
this was Vivian.
Vivian, yeah. And Vivian worked very closely with him on multiple productions. And it was right around this time, because she was initially on the crew, and I believe she was going to be doing sound design or something for
Yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut. Right around this time, she became very deeply involved with the Church of Scientology and withdrew from her family. And Kubrick was very upset about this. Apparently, he had written her like a letter that was like 40 pages long,
yeah.
begging her to come back to her family and abandon this cult that she had joined. Strange that it's happening all around the same time, and the 2 leads on this production are both public Scientologists. You wonder what happened there. Like, how did she
Yeah.
get introduced to Scientology?
Yeah, and it's also interesting because Scientology, they consider Stanley Kubrick what they call a suppressive person, or that's what they call basically an enemy of their church.
Right.
Anyway, why did I so abruptly bring up Scientology?
Yes, tell me.
Because the emblem of the Church of Scientology is basically the Star of Ishtar, just
Right.
with a cross overlaid on top of it. But
Right.
it's the Star of Ishtar.
I also took note as I was doing research that the Star of Ishtar is also on the emblem of the CIA.
Oh my God.
I'm not sure what that means, but there's also other conspiracy theories around Kubrick's other productions that have connections to the CIA. We can, I mean, we won't go into those in detail, but obviously everyone knows the moon landing stuff.
Listen to our previous episode on The Shining.
Yeah, well, and A Clockwork Orange,
Yep.
MK Ultra connections. Anyway, that can be our next Kubrick episode. But I'm just saying, there's layers of connection here.
But anyway, that emblem of Scientology, the cross over top the Star of Ishtar. Why a cross? What does Scientology have to do with Christianity?
Yeah.
Well, the cross, aside from being a symbol of Christianity, has historically also been a symbol of Saturn.
That's right.
Our
If you
old-
go back to our, what did we call that episode?
I think.
The Saturnian Nexus or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, we did an episode.
Yeah,
Go back
our
and
old friends
listen
in
to it.
the cult of the Black Cube.
Yeah.
And basically in that episode, we went over this supposed cult of elite people in very high places of power throughout the world that are all throughout history
Yeah.
have worshipped Saturn, the god, not the planet. And their symbol being the black cube. Scientologists are actually Saturn worshippers, apparently. And Baal worshippers.
Well, or they just appropriated those symbols, just the way that Christianity appropriated those symbols from earlier traditions.
Yeah.
Connecting to the appropriation of symbols and the symbols baked within the movie, another very prominent symbol, you could argue probably the most prominent symbol that carries you through the whole story, is that of the rainbow.
Yeah.
And the rainbow, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, is meant to symbolize the dream world, or transitioning to the dream world. And that's the bulk of the movie. We follow Tom Cruise's character, Bill
Harper.
Thank you. On this journey on Christmas Eve where things get increasingly strange and surreal. And we're left with this impression that it's this dream fog he goes through.
Yeah, the movie even kind of opens with not a visual symbol, but a mention of the rainbow. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, they're at this character Victor Ziegler's party, and these two women are being quite flirty with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
They want to take him upstairs. They're taking him upstairs somewhere.
Yeah.
Because something goes on upstairs, and
Yeah.
they're leading him towards the staircase, and they're saying, "Don't you want to see what's at the end of the rainbow?"
Yeah.
Where are we going? We're going to the end of the rainbow.
Yeah. Well, and that character of Ziegler, he's obviously deeply embedded within that cult.
Yeah.
And he's Bill, Tom Cruise's character, he's the connection to that cult.
Yeah. He's a middleman.
He's a middleman. So something we'll get to a little later, but I have a personal theory about this, is that basically everything that happens to Bill's character, Tom Cruise, is orchestrated by Ziegler to initiate him in a ritualistic fashion into this cult. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we can get into that a little later.
And that again, getting back to Jeffrey Epstein, I mentioned Ziegler. He's a very Jeffrey Epstein-like character. He's some super wealthy socialite that lives in a mansion townhouse in New York. He throws these huge, very lavish parties. It's not really clear what exactly he does or where his money comes from, but he's very charming. He's very charming and outgoing when they walk into this party. And then Tom Cruise ends up upstairs at this party, and what does he find? He finds Victor Ziegler in the bathroom with a prostitute.
Yeah, who's overdosing on drugs.
Yeah.
And that's why he's called him upstairs, right? Again, that could be set up, right?
Yeah.
To the initiation.
He wants to see how Tom Cruise is going to react to this situation.
Yeah.
Is Tom Cruise going to be okay with this? Is Tom Cruise going to keep his secret?
Yeah.
I should stop calling him Tom Cruise and call him Bill Harper.
I know, I keep, whatever. So people know, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at it, that's kind of a micro first contact exchange. Yeah. Because what Ziegler sets up there is now the character of Bill, Tom Cruise, gets him out of that situation. He's able to revive the girl. And so he doesn't have a dead prostitute on his hands. And the character of Ziegler swears Tom Cruise's character, Bill, to secrecy, right? Which he agrees. So now Bill has something on Ziegler. There's been an exchange. Very much similar to the exchange of being indoctrinated and initiated into a cult, right? Yeah. Especially when we look at the realities of what's going on in the world today with Epstein. I look at that as not just criminal behavior, but dark, evil, occult behavior.
Yeah.
That it follows a lot of these same patterns of initiation and levels of initiation that go deeper. You go deeper into debt with this blood cult, right? And it just gets darker the deeper you get. Well, and this is the first step.
I mean, look at someone like Epstein. What was publicly known about the man up to just recently was wealthy investment banker type person. Financial stuff. That's where his money came from.
Yeah.
But he was involved in child sex trafficking. That's what was known about him. But now all this other stuff has come up. This huge, 3 million pages of documents has come up. What do you see in that? You see references to cannibalism. You see references to the occult. You see references to actually hunting humans.
Yeah. You
see references to things like adrenochrome.
Yeah.
Which was just conspiracy theory just a short
few years
while ago.
Yeah. And this disturbing thing is how deeply he's embedded with absolute highest echelons of power throughout the entire world. Everybody's in there. Did you come across the Surrealist Ball, the 1970
the one hosted by the Rothschilds?
That's right. And so if we can dissect the masked party, the masked ball scene, a very ritualistic, again, wild sex orgy.
And actually filmed at a mansion that had previously been owned by the Rothschild family.
That's right. That's right. And you know who eventually got sold to? Was the Maharishi. Right?
I didn't know that.
The transcendental meditation guru. Yeah. So, really weird stuff. Really weird stuff. But did you see any pictures in your research from that Surrealist Ball in 72?
Yeah, it was quite the thing. Everyone had to wear these really weird abstract looking masks.
That's right.
Or decorations. The table settings were all decorated with parts of mannequins.
That's right. Yeah, dinner was served on a naked mannequin. And the table settings, there was parts of dolls that were burnt and torn apart.
The invitations when they sent out were all written backwards, so you had to hold them up to a mirror to read them.
Yeah, and the entire front face of the mansion was lit up in bright red, just soaked in red, which is disturbing.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting to see. You look at pictures of that masked ball, and it definitely seems to mirror this party that is portrayed in the movie Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Getting back to Epstein, he was so tied up with so many elite people, and I think people like to think Epstein was kind of the center of all these horrible things going on. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was just the middleman, like Ziegler.
And and that's the thing about him. Like, we're very focused, I guess. Publicly, media is very focused on Epstein files right now, and him as a person and who he was connected to. But yeah, like you say, he's just one cog in the system. He definitely seems like he holds the role, if we're going to continue with this kind of occult analogy, of kind of a high priest.
Yeah.
Of this cult of horrible people, whoever they are, Saturn worshippers, God knows what. But he can be replaced.
Yeah.
By someone else. A new sorcerer, lead priest, priestess will step into that role, and it'll all continue, because all those structures of power in the background, those have existed for centuries. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's not going anywhere. And like, I get sick of hearing about the Epstein files. It's uncomfortable. It's gross. I don't like thinking about it. And I get sick of it being in my face every day, to be honest. But I think we do have to allow it into our awareness, no matter how uncomfortable it is, because the only way to fight back against that kind of stuff existing in our world is to shine a light of truth on it.
Yeah.
And force ourselves to look at it and know that it's there. Because these people, those groups, they thrive on hiding in the dark.
Yeah.
And they count on the fact that you don't want to look at that. You'd rather not know.
Yeah. And we know
sometimes you have to.
And we know these kinds of groups exist. This weird ritual at the mansion in the movie, it seems like such a surreal thing. We know that this sort of thing happens in real life. I thought it would be apropos to just talk about the Bohemian Club and the Grove very briefly.
Once again this night, and in the flames that beat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free. You shall burn me once again.
Because I think that's the closest real-world analog we have of that mansion party in the movie.
Yeah.
You've got people in robes in the darkness conducting this occult ritual involving sacrifice. They burn an effigy of a human being in front of this giant statue of an owl, which is supposed to represent Moloch or Baal, the god that was worshipped through child sacrifice.
Beyond all care, and all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
I believe Richard Nixon was quoted as saying that the Bohemian Grove was the most depraved thing he'd ever seen.
Yeah, but all sorts of powerful people go to it. All sorts of really powerful people go to it. You know, the membership is supposedly secret.
Yeah.
But there was a big leak in 2023 where the membership, or the current membership list, was leaked. And I did a little bit of work, and I looked at some of these names. And I'm not going to read these names on air, not because I don't think you can handle the truth. I just don't want to get either myself or the show in trouble by accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying these people are on the list of the membership of the Grove.
That's interesting. Who leaked it? Who uncovered it? Was it a man named Jones?
No. We can get into Mr. Jones later.
Okay.
But this was leaked just by staff.
Right.
You know, people got to work there.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Anyway, I found an interesting correlation in just the membership list of the Grove. I actually found a list of names of people who were members of the Bohemian Club, also members of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
An interesting thing I found about this list of names, just the few I was able to put together, all but one of them were in deep with Epstein. Interestingly enough.
Probably not surprising, you know.
But again, I'm not going to read these names.
Yeah. But again, it shows that connection, that this is not just criminal behavior, it's occult behavior.
Yeah. But again, these names, you've got CEOs of investment firms, former secretaries of state, former mayor of a major U.S. city. You've got the CEO of a major tech company. These are people that were all at the Grove, all also members of the World Economic Forum, all also in deep with Epstein.
Yeah. So let me completely derail you and bring this back to Kubrick. So do you think the telling of this story, because we know he loved that novel, Traum Novelle or whatever. Sorry if I'm butchering that.
No, that's pretty much
From
it.
long ago, for decades, he wanted to tell this story. Is Eyes Wide Shut meant to be a peek behind the veil? Do you think he was intentionally trying to expose these hidden networks because he knew something about it? Or do you think he just stumbled upon it, telling a story he wanted to tell? It's hard to believe, in my mind, Stanley Kubrick accidentally doing anything.
No, I think all of his movies have this theme of hidden power structures in the subtext. Eyes Wide Shut is just the most in your face about it.
Yeah.
Did he have those types of connections? I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, and it just makes you think about all the other conspiracy theories that swirl around him. Was he a person in danger or a dangerous person to hidden power structures because he did have knowledge, because he was involved on in some way? Was he at some level a CIA asset?
Well, you know, he never returned to the United States. After he relocated to the UK, he never set foot back in the United States.
Yeah, and he would kind of wave that off when asked, as like, well, I'm afraid of flying. But he also traveled a lot around Europe and flew frequently, so you could easily challenge that idea. Why did he really leave the States?
Yeah.
Did he think that was a dangerous place for him to be?
Yeah. I think Kubrick was starting to sense a lot of danger towards the end of his life. There's this story, Nicole Kidman told of it in an interview she did after Stanley Kubrick had died and after the movie had been released. She tells the story of this phone call she gets from Stanley Kubrick the day after this disastrous screening of this movie. And she says Stanley sounded really scared. And he said, they're going to poison us all so fast we won't know what hit us.
Yeah.
And that was the day before he died.
Yeah. And that's a very strange thing to say.
Yeah.
That's odd. That really makes you think.
There's even a theory that Kubrick predicted his own death in the movie.
Okay, yeah. You mentioned this to me before, and I didn't quite get it. I didn't track that. So can you explain that one to me?
Okay, so the odd timing of Stanley Kubrick's death, it led to a lot of theories. You know, they wanted to cut this movie because he'd revealed too much.
Yeah.
But they couldn't because of the contract. So they kill him. But you know how this is countered is people say, well, Stanley Kubrick was an old man. He hadn't really taken care of himself throughout his life. He was just a bundled up ball of stress. He was a workaholic. Yeah. He was a perfectionist. And he dropped out of a heart attack. It was always going to happen.
And he was 70, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was bound to happen.
Yeah.
So in the movie, there's this conversation between Tom Cruise's character, Bill Harper, and Ziegler. The same scene where Ziegler is saying, you know, I'm not going to tell you who these people were. So early in the movie, while Tom Cruise is at this party, he's kind of in a mask, in a robe, and he's trying to pass undetected in this party. But he receives a warning. This woman comes up to him and warns him, says, I don't know how you got in here. You don't belong here. You're not one of them, and you won't be able to fool them for very long.
Yeah.
You have no idea what they'll do to you if they find you. Get out while you still can.
Yeah.
He ignores the warning.
Yeah.
And basically he does get found out, and he's brought before a gathering of all these people. He's made to remove his mask, and there's an implication that he's going to be punished somehow.
Yeah.
It's left up to your imagination how they're going to punish him.
Yeah.
But
they threaten him and they threaten his family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this woman comes out and she says, no, I offer myself in his place.
Yeah.
I will offer myself in his place, let him go. Kind of the head of this whole thing is this guy in a red robe and a mask. He essentially shrugs and says, well, rules are rules.
Yeah.
You're free to go.
Yeah.
But be warned, if you say anything about what happened here, terrible consequences for yourself and your family. Anyway, through the course of Bill Harper's investigations the next day, as he's trying to retrace his steps and learn more about this, he discovers the identity of this woman who was at the party, who warned him. And she is found dead the next day of a drug overdose. And
it's the same prostitute that was in Ziegler's
Yeah.
party who overdosed, which would explain why she decided to advocate him and tried to warn him.
Yeah.
Because she obviously recognized him as a doctor that saved her life the night before.
Yeah. So Bill Harper, he confronts Ziegler with this. This was the woman. You killed her.
Yeah.
And Ziegler says, that was all theater. That was all theater. All of that I sacrificed myself garbage. It was all theater meant to scare you. Nothing happened to that woman. That wouldn't have happened anyway. We didn't do anything to her. She was a prostitute, she was a junkie, and she died of an overdose.
Yeah, people die.
These things happen.
It happens, yeah.
People die every day, life moves on, until it doesn't.
Yeah.
This just mirrors exactly what was said about Stanley Kubrick. He was a workaholic, he was an old man, he was in poor health, and this was always going to happen to him. We didn't do anything to him.
Yeah. People die every day, move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the world does, right?
Yeah.
When you look at analysis of this movie, and definitely you could argue that child sacrifice is a theme that's baked into the movie. The very end scene of the movie is examined very closely in analysis.
Yeah, so on its face, the movie ends in a very tongue-in-cheek way. The movie doesn't end in a very serious way, but if you re-examine that end scene and look at what's going on in the background, it becomes a much darker scene.
Yeah, it's very framed. Yeah, you could look at it on the surface level because they've been through this horrible journey, Tom Cruise has, and his wife, and he's kind of confessed to Nicole Kidman's character, his wife, everything that went on. But then they decide, well, it's Christmas, our daughter's expecting us to take her to the mall and go Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
And the last scene of the movie is them strolling through this completely decked out New York toy store, Christmas decorations everywhere, Christmas music, toys surrounding them. And they're surface level hiding their morose feelings of everything that's happened.
They're having a conversation. They're with their daughter in the toy store. The daughter's looking at all these toys, and they're having this sort of hushed conversation of all these things Tom Cruise has just confessed, and how do they move forward in their lives and their marriage. So they're having this conversation. The daughter's wandering around looking at toys, and right before the last line of the movie plays out, which I won't repeat because we're a family-friendly show, you see the daughter in the background, and it's you have to be paying attention to see it. The daughter wanders off. She's taken away by these two older men wearing suits. And
it's a really strange shot. The implication is basically they're handing their daughter over to this cult.
Yeah, because those two older men you see walk away with their daughter. You see them throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
Always just in the background.
Yeah.
Always from the beginning of the movie. They're in the background. They're at Ziegler's party.
Yeah.
You see them just sprinkled throughout the movie. When Tom Cruise is paranoid and he's being followed, those men are there.
Yeah. And I mean, when I first saw this in analysis, I was like, okay, is that reading too much into that? It's such a subtle thing. But then when I rewatched the movie and I kind of rewatched that end scene once or twice, no, that seems very deliberate. It is subtle. It's just in the background, and the shot intentionally cuts away from the daughter. As soon as you just get one moment of her kind of looking back at her parents as she's kind of being led away by these two men out of view, and then it cuts to a close-up on Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
So you're very much just in their conversation between the two of them, and the rest of the backdrop of the toy store goes away. So your focus is immediately redirected on their private world and their private conversation.
Yeah.
And you're kind of meant to, if you weren't really paying attention, you wouldn't notice that their child is all of a sudden just out of the scene.
Yeah, and there's so much going on in that scene that you don't notice the first time you watch it, but your brain noticed.
Yeah,
that's what Kubrick does.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in that toy store. There's pentagrams everywhere. There's like a huge pile of boxes of this board game called the Magic Circle.
Yeah, which mirrors the ritual from the mansion.
Yeah, the cover of this board game kind of mirrors the ritual in the mansion party. And Kubrick did this very intentionally, not accidentally. He would have had those boxes specifically placed there. He would have had that cover and that design of that box specifically designed for that scene.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also that big teddy bear display.
Yeah.
So I don't want to dig too deep into this because it's something I found very last minute, but I was watching another documentary on Stanley Kubrick, and it was talking about this theory about The Shining and the relationship between Jack Torrance's character and his son Danny. And even though nothing is expressly put in the Shining movie that implies this, but the argument was made that you could interpret things in such a way that Jack Torrance was actually abusing Danny, and that a hint in that baked into the movie is the symbol of a teddy bear.
Yeah.
Right? And as they're traversing the toy store in Eyes Wide Shut, there's a massive teddy bear display. It's like a mountain of teddy bears.
Yeah.
So it's very obvious, and that's right before their daughter is supposedly led away and taken away by this cult. So it's really disturbing. Again, I'll say again, it's hard to look at when you start pulling on these threads, but I think it's important to do so from time to time.
Yeah.
And you know, like we try to keep this show, the whole vibe of the show is supposed to be entertainment and light and fun way of exploring these ideas and concepts, but it cuts two ways. Curiosity, you know?
Yeah.
Curiosity can be a lot of fun, but sometimes curiosity opens doors into some pretty dark rooms. And so it's not always for the faint of heart, and sometimes you got to look in those rooms and see what's going on.
Well, yeah, there's, like I said, there's things that came up in my research for this episode that I'm not going to say in the episode.
Yeah.
But
well, our
anyway.
last episode got torpedoed pretty bad by the YouTube algorithm, so this one might as well.
We'll see.
But we've been trying to be careful. You know? We've been minding our P's and Q's.
Yeah. But anyway, the implication of that final scene being that, or my interpretation of that, is that, you know, Tom Cruise, they're letting him go. He's seen all their secrets, but they let him go. But there's a sacrifice that has to be made.
Yeah.
And that sacrifice is his daughter. He's giving his daughter
well,
over to
and
them.
maybe that's a piece that's missing in those 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you could interpret what's there as the things we don't see. There's a reckoning for them. Mm-hmm. And they have to agree to some recompense, because you do very much get the implication that they're both, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman's characters are both fully in the know, and they're deliberately doing something. You could interpret that from the conversation they had.
Well, what does Red Cloak say to Tom Cruise right before he lets him go? He says, "You won't reveal anything you've seen here tonight, or there will be terrible consequences for you and your family." And what does Tom Cruise do? He goes and he starts questioning people about it. He tells his wife everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
Yeah. Well, and when the conversation they're having, right at that moment, when their daughter's taken away, Tom Cruise's character asks his wife, "What are we going to do?" And she says, I forget exactly what it is, but she says, "I think we should be grateful that we've survived this."
Yeah.
Which, if you look at it in the context of like a child sacrifice to the god Moloch or something like that, you're doing that to appease this entity. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like at that moment she's all in. And they talk about, I think something, there's a line, if I'm remembering correctly, of like, we're awake now.
Yeah.
And we're going to be awake for the rest of our lives, you know, something like that. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that.
On the subject of sacrifice, I just want to just briefly touch on the Andrew, formerly known as Prince.
That's good. I like that.
Because
thanks for lightening the mood.
You know, he is in a lot of trouble right now, and you know what? He deserves every bit of it. And he was obviously in deep into some really bad things involving Epstein. But I feel like he is kind of the fall guy, or one of the fall guys.
Yeah.
Like I said, he deserves all the bad things happening to him. But look at the royal family, the British royal family. How much did they know about what was going on with Andrew? They knew everything. Of course they did. Of course
Allegedly,
they did.
supposedly.
As a prince, Andrew would have a security detail and staff following him everywhere he went. They'd be monitoring his every movement.
Yeah.
Of course, the entire royal family knew. And now you've got Charles very much trying to distance himself from his brother. Will cooperate fully with the authorities. Justice must take its course and all that. As if he's not involved.
Yeah.
I don't think Charles or the rest of the royal family, I don't think their hands are so clean in this.
Allegedly. Supposedly.
I really don't. I mean, I could see Prince Charles being involved in satanic stuff. You saw the recent portrait of him, his official coronation portrait.
Yeah, not until you sent it to me. But I didn't understand why you're talking about it. I know you're looking at royal family stuff, but then you sent it to me, and I was like, holy crap!
He looks like Vigo the Carpathian from Ghostbusters
Again,
2.
it is like a wash in red.
Yeah.
Aside from just his face. It's really creepy.
So the painter that did that portrait, his name is Jonathan Yeo, and he's known for portraiture. He's got a very odd choice of subjects, though. I look into some of his other subjects he's done portraits of. He's done portraits of, other royals, Prince Philip, Queen, what's Prince Charles, King Charles's wife's name? Camilla?
Yeah.
Camilla, yeah. He's done a portrait of her. He's also done a portrait of a series of portraits of Nicole Kidman, in which he's wearing a pentagram.
Oh, really?
He's done this really creepy series of portraits on Kevin Spacey. And I don't know if it's true. I haven't found them. I can't find images of them. But I've read he did a series of portraits of Jeffrey Epstein as well.
Well, that would make him a really odd choice if you're trying to distance yourself from Prince Andrew's connection to Epstein, is to choose this artist who's...
And the really weird... I'm going to get really wild and conspiratorial.
Okay.
The wild thing about that painting of King Charles with the blood red background and the little butterfly on his shoulder that just looks so creepy, if you flip it upside down and then mirror it, try this at home, flip that image upside down and then mirror it, you get a picture of Baphomet.
Yeah, you said that, and I looked up an image for that, and I was like, okay, I don't know. I sort of see it. I think if you flip and invert and mirror any image, you can line it up just so in a way where it's going to look like something demonic and awful.
I disagree. This is a very
just
specific
devil's advocate.
Baphomet.
It's devil's advocate. No pun intended. But yeah, okay. We should probably wrap up. Did you have a final thought for us?
Yeah. So just throughout looking at Stanley Kubrick's films, one of the kind of common themes is he sprinkles a lot of Jungian psychology in his movies.
Okay.
And what do I mean by Jungian psychology? Jungian psychology deals with the self, consisting of the ego, followed by the personal unconscious, followed by the collective unconscious, symbols and archetypes and mythology. Beneath that is what Jung calls the shadow. What the shadow is, it's the traits about ourselves that we try to reject and don't like to admit even to ourselves.
Okay.
Actually, Jungian psychology has this whole process called shadow integration, because having an unintegrated shadow basically means you've got these traits about yourselves you suppress. They don't go away. They go below the surface, but they become concentrated and gain autonomy.
So you almost split your personality, to borrow a term.
Yeah.
So you create kind of a subconscious dark self.
Yeah. According to Carl Jung, the person with the unintegrated shadow is compulsive and secretive, addictive, and ritualized.
And probably would act out in ways they normally wouldn't when the ego was under attack.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we see happen to the character of Bill in this movie.
Yeah. But if you can integrate your shadow persona, you recognize and own these capacities within yourself. You rob them of their autonomy. You rob them of their control over you. Aggression can become assertiveness. Power can become leadership. Darkness can become depth. And so on. Anyway, why do I bring this up? It feels almost like through the lens of the movie and through the lens of contemporary stories about Epstein and everything involved in that, these organizations feel almost like the shadow persona on a macro level.
Yeah.
These are the things and these are the people we don't
don't
like to admit about ourselves. We don't like to admit that these people were human beings. This is us. These are things we are capable of and can do.
I see where you're going. It's like we've got a peek at the dark underbelly of our civilization, of our entire civilization, has now come to light a little bit.
Yeah. And I think maybe one of the reasons Stanley Kubrick was such a fan of Carl Jung, because people often said they said this to Stanley Kubrick, your movies are very dark, you deal with all these really awful things going on in the world, and Stanley Kubrick would say, well, there's something positive there too, and at least we can wrap our minds around the problem. And I think Carl Jung's solution to the shadow persona is the only way we move forward as individuals and as a people is by hauling these things out into the light.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we're starting to see that a bit with all the information that's come out about Epstein, but he's not the only person like that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that network goes deep, and it doesn't end with him, child trafficking and abuse of young people. It didn't end with Epstein's death. And that's the scary part of it, is how integrated and how deep those connections go. That's what's so scary about it. But that's why we do have to pay attention, so that we don't allow these people to hide in plain sight in our world. I think there does need to be a reckoning. Well, that's great. That's really interesting stuff. Really dark. I'm sorry, everyone, if that got a little depressed. It was not meant to be. Fun conversation, fun exploration. I really enjoyed learning specifically about Kubrick and just his personal history.
Oh, he's a fascinating character.
Really interesting. I've seen a number of his movies, but not all of them, and it really made me want to go back and kind of watch his entire catalog to understand him better. I think I know the answer, but just because we're wrapping up, what's your favorite Kubrick movie?
It's The Shining.
Yeah, that's what I figured you'd say.
Yeah.
I think I gotta go. I really like The Shining, but I think I gotta go with Full Metal Jacket.
I was never a huge, I like Full Metal Jacket, but I don't watch it very often. I actually find that movie kind of depressing to watch.
Well, I think they're all depressing.
I don't.
At least the ones I've seen.
I don't get depressed watching The Shining, and
I find Clockwork Orange the most depressing. It's the one that just irks me the most.
Well, like I said, Stanley Kubrick's movies, they're pretty dark, but usually I'm just so fascinated by what's going on to be depressed. But Full Metal Jacket, I just found depressing.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, I hope everyone is having a great weekend. We're going to wrap it up, and I hope this didn't bring anybody down too much, and I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. Do us a favor and like this video. Leave a comment, leave us a review, because I'm sure the algorithm is gonna suppress this one and knock it down. Our last episode is not doing so great on YouTube. Please go. I really loved that episode. I was really worried about it when we recorded it. I actually thought we might have to toss it out because our recording session was so rough, but it really turned out, it's one of my favorite episodes. So please go back, check out our last episode, and give this one a like, a comment. We know a lot of our listeners come from Apple Podcasts, from our analytics data.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can comment on Apple Podcasts.
You can leave us a rating.
But you can leave us a rating.
Leave us a rating on Apple, or if Spotify's your thing, leave us a rating.
Leave us a 5-star rating or a show review. That kind of stuff really helps us. It's something you can do absolutely for free. That'll help support the show and help us what we're doing over here. So we'll leave it with that. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Down in the cellar they keep the names of vanished sons and inherited shames, written in gold on a red goat skin, a ledger of loss and original sin. Above in the hall the music sways like a chain gang hymn from the end of days, and somebody cries but nobody moves. They just polish their shoes and recite the rules. You can buy your fate for a favored price, with a family seal and a little vice, but the devil keeps books with a patient grin, and he always knows who let him in. Oh, the candles bend and the floorboards sigh, and the smoke curls up like a question why. There's a hand on the book, there's a knife in the light, and the moon wears a mask tonight. So if you hear knocks where the walls are thin and a choir of teeth in the midnight wind, don't ask who feeds at the hidden table, or who built the throne, or who wrote the fable, because